This video is going to go over the Predicting Products lab. When you're doing this lab, there is a paper PreLab, and you should be able to get some of this from either a PowerPoint presentation or a Google Slides that's posted on the Google Classroom. And the purpose, what it says up here, the purpose is to perform a series of reactions, make careful observations, identify products, and write equations to describe the reactions. So to help you with that, on page 3, there's a data table, and this is what you're going to fill out as you're doing the experiment. You want to write down any observations you see, and a lot of times it says before, during, and after the reaction, but also pay attention to what's going on over here. If it's a white box, it's something that you should be able to fill something in for. So for example, like what happens with magnesium and hydrochloric acid with a flaming splint. Write down whether the splint goes out, whether it makes a popping noise, whether it, whatever's going to happen, you want to write things down in those boxes. Now, what I'm going to do is go over the procedure for these. So for this first reaction, you're going to take copper powder. Now, if we run out of copper powder, we might have copper in another form. But you're going to take copper, you're going to put it into a crucible, and you're going to heat it over the Bunsen burner for a specific amount of time. You want to get the mass before and after you heat it, along with making any qualitative observations. How does the copper look different before and after you do the experiment? For reaction number 2, you're going to take a piece of magnesium, and before you hold it in a Bunsen burner, you want to make observations, but use tongs, hold it in a Bunsen burner, and hold it over a watch glass. So after it burns, you can observe what's left of it and see how it's different before and after the reaction. For reaction 3, now this one you definitely need 2 people to get the timing down on this. You're going to have a piece of magnesium, you're going to have 3 molar HCl, and you're going to need 2 test tubes, the test tube rack, test tube holder, and a Bunsen burner. Now what you want to do is get the right amount of volume of hydrochloric acid and put it into one of the test tubes. And before you put the magnesium into that test tube, one of the partners should light a wood splint with a Bunsen burner. So this should be on fire. And the other test tube should be in the test tube holder. Now once you have this wood splint lit, you throw the magnesium into the hydrochloric acid, and you're going to see a reaction that occurs, and you want to collect the gas. So as soon as the magnesium goes into the hydrochloric acid, start collecting the gas. And you want to collect that for a couple seconds, maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds. Now what you want to do is have a wood splint that's on fire, and you want to test the gas that's being collected in there. So really, one person moves that top test tube a little bit, and you just hold the wood splint there when it's on fire. You don't put the wood splint all the way into the liquid. You just hold it here, and you should be able to observe the reaction from that. What you do not want to do in this experiment is throw the magnesium into the hydrochloric acid and then try and light the splint, because the gas is already being generated, and that's just going to escape, and you're not going to be able to actually test it with the wood splint. So light the wood splint before you put the magnesium into the hydrochloric acid. For reaction 4, you're going to take ammonium carbonate, and it says 1 scoop, so you don't have to get the mass of this. The scoop would just be something like this. You put it into a test tube. You want that clamped. And what you want to do is heat it over a Bunsen burner. Remember, when you heat, that the test tube should be pointed away from you and anybody else. So just point it to either the side wall or the back wall. And while that's heating up, you don't want the Bunsen burner on real strong, because what it's going to do is cause this ammonium carbonate to come out of the test tube. So the flame doesn't have to be real high. And while that's going on, you're going to take a piece of cobalt paper. Kind of looks like pH paper, but it's not. And you want to hold this to the mouth of the test tube, and you should see something going on with this. The other thing you do is you light the wood splint with the Bunsen burner, and you put it all the way into the test tube, and you should be able to make observations for that too. You also have to smell this. Remember to use the proper technique. You want to waft it. It's going to have a strong smell. You don't want to just put this right over your nose and smell it. It's going to burn your nose if you do that. So waft it towards your nose to get the smell. For reaction 5, you are going to have hydrogen peroxide. you're going to pour a certain amount into a test tube, and you're going to have manganese dioxide. This is a catalyst. You only use a very small amount of this, and this is an important part. So it says just the tip of a scapula. It does not take much. Something like that would be good enough. You're going to put that into the hydrogen peroxide. The reaction is going to be very obvious. You're going to test that one with another piece of cobalt chloride paper, so just hold it to the mouth of the test tube. Now for this one, it says to test it with a glowing splint. A glowing splint is one where you caught the splint on fire, you let it burn for a couple seconds, and then you blow out the flame, so it has that red ember on it. And that's what you put into the test tube. Don't put it so far into the test tube that it touches the liquid. You should just be testing the gas above the liquid. For reaction 6, this is a simple one. You're going to have a watch glass. You're going to have two different droppers. One of them is potassium iodide and one of them is lead 2 nitrate. You just put a couple drops of each onto the eyeglass and you make the observations. For this one, pay attention to disposal. You just want to wipe it with a paper towel and put that into the trash can. For reaction 7, we're going to use copper 2 carbonate. It's this greenish solid. You're going to use your larger test tube, and it says to put in 2 scoops into here. So you're not getting an exact mass. You don't have to mass it out, just 2 scoops. You're going to take lime water. Lime water is not like the citrus with lime squeezed into it. That is something different. You're going to put that into one of the small test tubes. What you want to do is heat up this copper 2 carbonate. When you're heating it, your flame does not have to be real high, and you want to make sure it's not so high that you're melting this rubber stopper. Right? So the flame should just be touching the bottom part of this test tube, and you want this rubber tube here submerged into the lime water. So when you fill this up, make sure it's high enough for it to cover up that tube. So you're going to generate a gas here, and it's going to bubble into that liquid. This test tube is not going to get hot, so if you have to hold it, that's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to take that long for you to see what you have to see. When you are doing these experiments, pay attention to what it says on the paper, because a lot of them have specific disposal instructions, so pay attention to that. Right? It's usually these things written here in italics, so as you're going through, watch out for that. And remember, make observations as you go. Don't do it when you're done all of them and you try and think back to what you did.